Like we mentioned in part 1 of chapter 1, Maplemation offers a bunch of effects packs you can use. Some are as simple as copying an effect symbol you like from one FLA and then pasting it in your project FLA. Some are made in folders with GIFs you drag in the canvas. It automatically makes a movie clip this way. Effects are usually pre-animated PNGs compiled by others and shared, so all you need to do is copy and paste them. When you have an effect, generally the background is going to be black, or the effect itself might have black bits in it, or darkened bits that don't look appealing. So, if you turn your effect into a movie clip symbol, you want to drag it into the timeline where you want it, and click on it to open the object panel for properties. Then you want to go over to the right side of your animate, or flash, and click on the properties panel. After that, you go down to the blend drop-down menu, and click the button that says normal with an arrow pointing down, and another menu should pop. Click add or screen. The black background on the effect should have disappeared. Some effects might have a lighter background color, so you might want to use the screen effect instead. Your main go-to blend will be add or screen though. Adds are useful for a majority, but sometimes are a little too bright, like for wind effects, so you might want to use screen for them. Graphics are a second type of symbol. Graphics are useful for when you find an effect with a transparent background. If the effect has a transparent background, turn it into a graphic symbol and put it into Flash. Movie clips are known for not letting you be able to see the effect play out in the timeline. So, when you get a chance to turn an effect into a graphic, do it. It's a lot easier to manage in your workspace. Interestingly, in later versions of Animate, you can get around this. We talked about it in Chapter 1 Part 8 on symbols, but we'll quickly recap. The way it's done is more on the frame state of properties. If you click the frame the graphic is on, and assume that it's just a graphic symbol there, you can see on the right that you can add filters and whatnot. Be aware that this does it to everything on that frame. Notice how instead of the black keyframe, it's a white keyframe. That's when it has frame blend modes. One issue that may come of this if you have two graphics over one another on the same layer, they'll have this ugly square. The way to get around this is just to paste them on separate layers. So we just do this and boom. You can play the effect and see it being played with the blending mode. If you animate something small and snappy, don't use a giant sparkling hit effect that lasts for 30 seconds. It's weird. And by that same token, if you're animating a building getting blown up or an explosion so big you can see it from really far away, you don't want a tiny fart explosion that lasts for 3 frames. That's also weird. Some effects will work in some situations, some others will work in most situations, and some won't. Your goal is to experiment and find out what does and doesn't work. More on that note, effects, when used appropriately, can be used to enhance a specific sequence and make it seem larger than life and exciting. We place great emphasis on the idea that effects enhance animations. Don't animate something based around what effects you want to use. It's very easy when you find a bunch of pretty effects to just want to throw them all into an animation. If you do that, you might end up accidentally obscuring most of your animation by layering a bunch of effects on top of it. Filters are stuff you can do to symbols. Blur is what it says. You blur the sprites. Useful for backgrounds and keeping things in and out of focus. You can also adjust the direction of the blur by changing the X and Y values like so. Keeping X at 0 means you'll get a vertical blur, and keeping Y at 0 means you'll get a horizontal blur. You can also change the quality. Quick tip, you can actually have diagonal blurs by right-clicking the symbol, converting to bitmap, and then rotating the sprite. Boom. This act of converting to bitmap is useful for larger images like backgrounds so Animate doesn't lag when you keep the blur. Glows are also self-explanatory. It adds a glow around the sprite. Feel free to mess around with the settings however you see fit. Bevel is useful if you want to add a source of light for the sprites like an incoming fire blast, or a beam is going towards your sprite. Mess around with the values here until you get what you want. The UI is easy to understand, so we won't go into every single value. Adjust colors is useful if you want to change the color of your effects or sprites by changing the hue to what you want. You can also do this to the brightness and contrast. Again, it's up to you how you want it to look, so just mess around with the values until you get what you want. By the way, in Animate and Flash, if you zoom the camera in too close, filters don't appear, so keep that in mind. Something we forgot to mention in Part 8 on symbols is color effects. If you click it, you'll see some options. A lot of these are self-explanatory. None means nothing is one. Brightness lets you change the sprites. Well, brightness. 100% is white, minus 100% is black, and anything in between. Tint is like brightness, but for any color. You can choose the amount with this slider. Advanced is pretty much all of this. Experiment with it to get a better understanding. Alpha is for transparency, 100% is fully opaque, and 0% is fully transparent. You can do anything in between too. You can even tween this stuff so you can do things like a fade out.